Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of A Beautiful Mess with Erin Baker. This podcast is specifically about all the messy things and that those messy things are real and every single one of us has it. Yeah, every single one of us is messy. And we can all seek to find some beauty in that. So today's episode is about masks. And shout out if you have no idea what a mask is. When I'm talking about this could be cultural masking, this could be masking done with autism, this could be masking done in the workplace and all of that kind of thing. Obviously, my personal masking story is going to talk a lot about my masking due to my autism and ADHD and anxiety and all of that stuff, right? So, and we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. And I'm sure there's nobody out there who has that issue. Is that correct? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. This is Baker Street Success. And you know what? If you're struggling with any of these things or you want to have a conversation, I really am this real. That's part of the reason why I start with no makeup, plain visage here for you if you're watching. If you're listening, I hope to have my loving, warm voice during the entire time. And if you are struggling with any of these things that we are talking about today, or if you want some help or some guidance, be sure to reach out to me. You can reach out to me at erin.baker.education@gmail.com, or you can text me 360-726-2318, or you can visit me on Facebook, Instagram, or at my website, www.bakerstreetstudentsuccess.com. All right, so in this podcast, if you're happening to be watching this somehow, I intentionally do this podcast while putting on my makeup. And part of the reason why I do that is because it is difficult for me to think about how can I have a conversation that isn't too much like, like a presentation, because this is not, I'm going to give you some really good stuff in these podcasts, but I don't want you to feel like it's not accessible. And one of the ways that I like to show accessibility is I show you, like the reality of me. So there are going to be some times during this, again, if you're watching it, that you're going to see me look kind of ridiculous. Some of us look ridiculous when we're putting on our makeup, and that's the reason for it. And I also just love the concept of you as the audience being able to see me put on my makeup, my literal mask, when a lot of the stuff that we talk about is about masking. So I just love that there. But anyway, so today is about the mask, and specifically about the mask is slipping and that it's okay. So I recently had an amazing opportunity to share a bit of my story of being a neurodivergent woman and what that kind of looks like by creating a monologue for a recent production that I was in for Vagina Monologues. The reason that this was so important to me, Vagina Monologues, if you're not aware, is really about protecting and building awareness against domestic violence, specifically about women, but women in all countries, women of all ages, women of all colors, shapes, sizes, and every representation of women. So a lot of amazing things about that. And I've been participating in that for quite a few years, but there has never been, shocker, shocker, a monologue or anything describing what it's like to the female experience with neurodiversity. And one of the reasons why I find that so important and I'm so passionate about it is because there is a comment and a phrase that they came up with several years ago for the month of April, which is coming up, for Autism Awareness, which is now moving to Autism Acceptance Month. And what the phrase was light it up blue for autism awareness at the time. And the reason it was lighted up blue is because the vast majority of people that were being diagnosed with autism were boys. And they discovered that there was a large population of boys, and how much it impacted boys. And so blue in certain societal groups, blue is kind of like the standard color that people think of when they think of boys, right? As opposed to pink. But those are only if you go with those traditional colors. But anyway, and what we've recently discovered in the last 3 to 5 years, you may have noticed some explosions happening online about ADHD, autism in women, in adult women who, went for years, either misdiagnosed or undiagnosed or things like that. And what they found out is that people were so focused on the kind of presentation that we're used to seeing in boys, behaviors that are a lot more noticeable. They stick out. A lot of people, when they think of typical autism behaviors, they'll think of people who are very blunt. They'll think of people who have a very flat affect. They're very literal. They don't get jokes. They're very quiet. They don't want to participate. And they can go into overload. Okay, so one of the issues is that females of all ages, and this is not exclusive to females because there are males who present this way as well and get completely overlooked. But typically speaking, females present in a very different way in most Western societies. And a lot of that has to do with kind of some of the expectations and societal roles that we put on women. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, or maybe you've said the phrase, oh, boys are just being like boys, right? And it's kind of like it's accepted and almost expected that boys are going to be, they're going to be rambunctious and they're going to hit and they're going to, talk over people and all of this other kind of stuff, right? But the expectation is that if you have a different presentation, maybe you're a little quieter, maybe you don't draw a lot of attention to yourself, that somehow that means you couldn't possibly have autism. And maybe you even come across as pretty neurotypical in most cases. What they found out is that females more often in our, like I said, in most Western societies, internalize a whole lot of behaviors that we see expressed externally in males. So you are more likely to see perfectionists. And I don't just mean, hey, I like to do things well. No, I mean, we literally can't do something less than 172%. We literally cannot stop until it is the way it should be, until it is that high quality. That's the kind of perfectionism that I'm talking about. And a lot of times that comes from the female presentation of, I have to be good, I have to interact well with other people, I have to take care of other people, I have to be a caregiver. And a lot of times, to be a caregiver and to be social with other people, you have to start to take a look at, okay, what do other people want? What do other people expect from me? And a lot of young girls who then grow up to be women really are spending most of their time trying to decode every single situation and anticipate the needs, anticipate the flow of the conversation, all of that kind of stuff. And so I really had this amazing opportunity to write this monologue and then to share it at the Vagina Monologues. And then I'm also going to get to share it at the upcoming event for the Voices of Belonging for Lewis County Autism Coalition. And it's called What Are Little Girls Made Of? And so I'd like to share that with you, and hopefully I can do it without getting too tangled up in my multitasking, which is not multitasking, it's task switching. But anyway, and I would love to share that with you and for you to give me your thoughts and things like that on it. So here it goes, okay? All right. What are little boys made of? Snips, snails, and puppy dogs' tails. That's what little boys are made of. What are little girls made of? Sugar, spice, and everything nice. That's what little girls are made of. I learned early that my existence was loud, not in sound, but in impact. The way my questions lingered too long in the air, the way my face didn't land the way people expected it to, the way my feelings showed up before they were invited. So I tried to shrink them, fold them, tuck them neatly into acceptable corners. Because girls are supposed to be easy. Girls are supposed to be intuitive, but not too intuitive. Helpful, but not exhausting. Smart, but not intense. No one told me I had ADHD and autism. They just told me I was too much, too sensitive, too dramatic, too anxious, too hard on myself. So I decided that the problem had to be mine. Must be me. I became a professional anticipator. I anticipated moods before they arrived. I anticipated needs before they were spoken. I anticipated outcomes, consequences, reactions, tone shifts, silences. I lived 10 steps ahead of everyone else, not because I was ambitious, but because I was terrified. Terrified of doing it wrong. Terrified of missing something obvious. Terrified of being the reason someone sighed, withdrew, got disappointed. I built my safety out of perfectionism. Brick by brick, checklist by checklist. If I did everything right, maybe no one would notice how ridiculously hard everything was. But perfectionism is not excellence. It's fear, but dressed up in a pretty outfit. It's lying awake at 2:47 a.m. replaying conversations like a crime scene footage. It's rewriting emails 12 times because one sentence could be misread. It's smiling when your nervous system is screaming because you don't want to be difficult. I learned to mask before I even learned to rest. I learned to perform competence before I ever learned what regulation felt like. I learned to doubt my instincts because they didn't look like everyone else's. And the anxiety. God, the anxiety. It wasn't just worry. It was a full body occupation, a constant hum beneath my skin saying, pay attention, don't mess this up. Something bad will happen if you relax. I wasn't anxious because I was weak. I was anxious because I was constantly translating myself. And I was translating myself into a language that was never built for me. They didn't have the words. Autism taught me depth. ADHD taught me motion. The world taught me shame. They said I was disorganized, but never asked how much energy it took to hold myself together in systems that just weren't flexible. They said I was scattered, but never noticed how fiercely I cared. They said I was intense, but never wondered what it costs to feel everything at full volume. And still show up smiling. Here's the thing no one tells you about being a neurodivergent woman. You don't just grow up. You disappear slowly into who you think you're supposed to be. Until one day you realize you've spent your whole life trying not to be a problem and forgot to ask if anyone else was safe enough to let you be real. Diagnosis didn't fix me. It returned me. It gave me language where there had only ever been blame. Context where there had only ever been confusion. Compassion where there had only ever been pressure. I'm not broken. I was misread. I'm not too much. I was never given enough room. And I'm done apologizing for a nervous system that learned to survive beautifully in a world that refused to listen. This is what it looks like when a woman stops performing ease and starts claiming truth. This is not a flaw. This is a story. And I'm finally telling it in my own voice. So, that was the end of the monologue. This is some of my favorite part of my makeup for other people to see me do. So if you're only listening, I am sorry for this. But I gotta tell you, it's one of my favorite parts because it looks so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. So I'm putting on foundation and highlights and lowlights and all that other kind of stuff. And so, of course, when you first put it on, it looks ridiculous. So, yeah, one of my favorite parts. Anyway, so now that we've done our monologue about women, how women and some men show up differently, and we're told that we're too much. And so we become that perfect what we think other people want us to be. So in today's episode about the mask is slipping, and that's okay, we're really talking about there is no such thing as perfection, right? We can all agree on that. Okay. Right? Okay, good. So eventually, everyone's mask has to slip. It is impossible to be perfect. No such thing. So that means our mask, our beautifully well-crafted, very practiced mask, is going to slip. So when I realized my mask was starting to slip, I was actually heading for what I thought was a nervous breakdown. Turns out, if neurodivergent people have to hold a mask without resting, without being seen, all these other kinds of things, they go into what's called autistic or ADHD burnout. And that can look a whole lot like a nervous breakdown. And it causes you to question, who are you? Who have you been? Who are you going to be? All of these things, right? And when your mask starts to slip, imagine those silly movies where you have the character who is pretending to be something completely different than they are. And not a casual different, but they're going to take you out, string you up, and murder you if they find out that you're here and you're faking. Because that's what it feels like. And as your mask starts to slip, I have noticed that my first instinct was to panic. And when you panic, your emotions are not regulated. And you can start to turn some of that stuff outwards. And you can start to turn some of that stuff into sometimes what other people can take as aggressive behaviors or aggressive tones or things like that. And really what it is you feel like you are in deep cover and your cover is about to be completely ruined, which puts your life in danger. That's what you feel like. And not only do you feel that external concept of, oh my God, there's unsafeness all around me, but then you start to have these internal, really ridiculous and debilitating conflicts with yourself, because you start to question, who the heck are you? Are you a person that snaps at people? Are you a person that takes your emotions out on other people? You know, and then constantly you're thinking, oh my God, that's not what I mean. If they just knew I was really struggling inside, and I just feel terrified And I really just need someone to come alongside me and tell me that it is okay for me to be the messiness that is me. Tell me it's okay. Be a safe person for me to be messy in front of. Have you thought about that? Do you have anyone in your life, hopefully more than one person, but hopefully at least one person, that it's okay to be messy in front of? Yeah. When you start to ask people about them being able to show up for you, them being able to support you and things like that. Support is not about everything's hunky-dory and you wave at me, or maybe we meet for coffee because everything's hunky-dory. Support means being there in the ugliness. Support means being there when things fall apart. And when your friend or your spouse or your parent or your child is completely falling apart and not able to control themselves. Support is being there and helping them to co-regulate, right? That is one of the most underappreciated things, is being a safe person for someone to be completely hideous and ugly in front of. Think about it. How many people do we tolerate, we'll say tolerate, being inappropriate around us? What we would consider each individual person to be inappropriate. Maybe they're too much. Maybe they're exhausting, right? And they probably need support. Every single one of us needs to feel like it's okay if we're not perfect. And that doesn't mean saying it's okay if you're not perfect. It means actually like living that out, right? Well, what does it look like? Have you thought about that? I had a recent situation with a family member, and I was getting really upset and I felt really hurt. And as a result, liquid emotions came out of my eyes. So the person who loves me very much was extremely uncomfortable and even told me, I'm not meaning to upset you and you don't need to cry. Well, I had to explain to them, crying is totally okay, and it's a completely reasonable response in this situation. Crying is ugly, and when we're around other people, when they're crying or they're falling apart, or their mask that we are used to them wearing all the time because they're so productive and they do so much, and they're that mom who gets everything done and those cupcakes and all that other kind of stuff, right? Being a safe person means maybe you're shocked. That's okay, right? Because, sometimes it can be really confusing if this is the first time that someone has actually let their mask down in front of you. But being a safe person means putting yourself aside and your feelings aside and saying, you know what? Gosh, this must be really hard for you. And I want to be as supportive of you as possible. Maybe that means a hug after that. Maybe that means, I don't know what it means in each of those individual situations. But the ability to be able to fall apart and really be 187% yourself is the most amazing feeling in the world. And I have to tell you, I know people talk about being authentic. I know people talk about being real and be your real self. And I want the real you, right? So here's the thing. If people want the real you, and if they say that they support you, the real you, that means they'll be able to handle it even when you're being messy. Because that's real. Every single person on this entire planet gets messy. And there really is an amazing beauty in that. And here's why I want to say, and yes, it's a little woo-woo, if you will, but I think there's something remarkably disturbing about complete and total perfection. If you're looking at something that's exactly perfect, or something disturbing about it, off-putting, because it's not natural. So I extend that to the beauty that we see on a regular basis, which is people. And the amazing kaleidoscope that happens and the beautiful colors that happen when we see the true messiness of people. And I'm here to tell you that once you start to accept that messiness, that it is yours, that it is your life, and that you also start to recognize that it's beautiful. Am I saying that every single moment of every day should be messy and you should be thankful for that? No. What I am saying is, we all of us live a completely imperfect life. And thank God, because that would be an impossible standard to live up to. So as you start to recognize, where are you masking? Why are you masking? Is it possible for you to start to let down your mask at times? Masks are very important. I am not remotely saying that masks are not important or not necessary. They very much are. And if we keep them up all the time, they're going to slip in a way that is completely unexpected and in a way that we're not prepared for. And it might end up looking like an autistic burnout, might end up looking like a nervous breakdown. Who knows? So let your mask slip a little with that safe person and let them know how important it is to you that they allow you to be the real, beautiful messiness that is you. Because you know what? You are beautiful. You're incredibly beautiful. And if nobody tells you that, you come talk to me, okay? Again, thank you so much for being with me today, and feel free to reach out to me either by email, erin.baker.education@gmail.com, text 360-726-2318, on Facebook and Instagram at Erin Baker or Baker Street Success, or at my website, www.bakerstreetstudentsuccess.com. Thank you for being here, and be good to yourself. Love the beautiful messiness that is you. I know I sure do.